Welcome to a new episode of The Bike Show, and as usual we have lots of news and views of motorcycling lined up, but without wasting any more time, let's head over to Albania for the 8th edition of BMW's International GS Trophy. After visiting Tunisia, South Africa, Patagonia, Canada, Thailand, Mongolia and most recently New Zealand, the event took place for the first time in Europe on the shores of the Adriatic Sea in southeastern Europe. Upon their arrival to this year's challenge, the riders pitched their tents, are allocated their new R1250 GS bikes, make the necessary adjustments to make them fit just so, and get ready for an early start to day one. The 2022 trophy sees 15 three-person male teams and for the first time a dedicated competition for 6 two-person female teams. South Africa returns as defending men's champions with 3 consecutive titles under their belts, although with different entrants each year, and the country is also represented in the new female competition. Given the performance of the men over the past 3 trophies, the pressure is almost unbearably high on the men to try and retain the trophy once again, but also on the women who have high expectations to carry on their shoulders given the consistently outstanding performances of the South African teams over the past 8 events. Day 1 involves 65 kilometres of road, 135 kilometres off-road, heading inland across a coastal plain to finish at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Berat Castle. After the first special time trial on a ridge above the coastline, the riding is relatively straightforward before they begin to climb into the hills and arrive at the second special test, the Halter Enduro Lap. After this, 2 further hours of enduro riding takes them to the finish line of the first day at the spectacular castle location. The UK team has blasted out of the gate early, taking wins in the route's 2 special stages, and leads the men's competition with South Africa 3rd, while SA's ladies are holding 2nd place behind the Germans after the riders have spent what the organisers call a gentle, introductory 11 hours on the trails. Another sunny 28-degree day greets the competitors, although the temperature will drop to 16 degrees as they climb further into the mountains on day 2. The riders head east along the central mountain range to the border with Macedonia, although the day begins with a special stage within the grounds of Berat Castle. Push the bike downhill with a deflated front tyre, remove the wheel and take it to a compressor and inflate to the correct pressure, and then refit, not forgetting which side the ABS ring is fixed and remembering to pump the brakes. Forget anything and you incur penalties. Halfway through the day, after descending to the Ossum River Valley floor, the competitors are greeted by a second special test that is a technical trial. In other words, you lose points for bailing off the bike or exiting the course, and even for dabbing, however briefly and lightly, with even the 1 foot. Speed counts, but so does accuracy, so it is a difficult challenge to balance the 2 requirements through the demanding course. After this, 3 more hours of trail riding up to a peak altitude of 1,524 metres before a descent to Lake Ohrid, Europe's oldest lake. Team Thailand now lead the men's competition. The Germans slip back to 2nd and the Safas are closing in on the leaders in 3rd. But the SA ladies have dropped to 3rd behind Germany and Mexico. Day 3 is a 200-kilometre day with 120 of those off-road, with a mixture of mountain trails and muddy forest tracks. Within half an hour, the GS riders ride into their first special test of the day, where the entire team has to ride into a 15-metre by 15-metre enclosure set on a pasture, collect a bottle of oil from a marshal, then pass it from one rider to the next, while moving, without putting a foot down or crashing. Only when the third rider has the bottle in his safekeeping can they then leave the enclosure and stop the clock. An excellent test of machine control, rider awareness and planning. After tackling an amazing tarred mountain road, the riders are into the forests and some fantastic rally type riding before ending the day with an enduro special stage. The UK men continue to build a strong lead over Thailand, and now Germany is in third, with the South Africans falling back to a relatively safe fourth ahead of the USA. In the female competition, the Germans are beginning to leave the field behind, with South Africa in second and the Mexicans hot on their heels. A relatively short 125-kilometre fourth day confronts the competitors, with 2/3 of it off-road, but don't let the reduced distance fool you. The day's loop into the Pindus Mountains requires some serious trial skills to navigate what are at times nothing more than goat tracks through the rugged terrain. Although most of the day was spent in first and second gears, the severe gradients and often loose shale, rock and limestone demand precision and total commitment. Once back into the camp, the day is far from over, with 3 special tests to be dealt with. The first task involves the whole team, each rider presented with a different challenge, and when all 3 team members, or 2 in the case of the ladies, are finished, they load a GS onto a trailer. The second challenge has the riders competing on foot, heading off into the woods to a predetermined GPS point where they can then transfer new coordinates into the GPS unit and race back to the start. The final test of the day is something of a GS trophy tradition, the slow race. Ride 100 metres within the 1 metre wide lane and don't dab or fall off. This is a big day for the South African men. They take the largest haul of points and pass Thailand to regain second place, only a single point now behind UK. The SA women lose their second spot to Mexico, while the Germans have another strong day, cementing their leading position. 130 kilometres of tar and 80 kilometres off-road lie ahead of the competitors on day 5 to bring them west and back to the Adriatic coast. Within 20 minutes there's a trial riding section that finishes with a shot at goal, but no using your feet to take the shot. You have to use the GS's rear wheel, and so those with mastery of the rear wheel slide score more easily. Threading their way along the foothills of the Pindus Mountains, the route eventually opens up to the coast through the valley of the Vjosa River. Next up is the stunning Bent's Gorge with its sheer 2,000-metre cliff face, but the GS riders take to the plain at the summit of the pass and onto yet more mountain trails. By the time the day ends at a beach resort, a refreshing dip in the sea helps ease some of the aches and pains of the past day's riding. It wouldn't be the GS Challenge though without a final test, this time involving a paddleboard and a race out and back into the Adriatic. South Africa has enjoyed another positive day, clawing back a single point to leave them tied for the lead with the UK. But Germany, the USA and China are within striking distance with 2 days left to ride. For the women, it is Mexico who win the day, closing in on the Germans who still lead after experiencing their worst day of results, with the South Africans still only 5 points adrift of second in a safe third place. Confronting the riders on the dawning of the penultimate day of the competition is a 250-kilometre ride back to the base camp where it all began 6 days ago. The route stretches out in front of the competitors and involves 120 kilometres of mountain trails and 30 k's of sand. The temperature will reach 35 degrees. The humidity is high. It's going to be a long, hard day. Half an hour into the mountain trails at the start of the ride, there's the first special test. An event that involves all 3 team members riding, but one of them is blindfolded and relies on the guidance of the other 2, who must also keep riding and not dab their feet. After this tricky test of teamwork, there's more mountain trails before a lunch stop and another special test. Created from carved rock slabs, the 3rd century BC Amantia Stadium was used by the Greeks and the Romans for various athletic endeavours, and now entertains a GS tug of war. More seemingly endless mountain trails follow in the stifling heat before sand tracks lead them between the various pools of the Karavasta Lagoon. After 10 hours of riding, base camp is finally achieved, and the South African men can rest content in the knowledge that their persistence, determination, skills and teamwork have finally propelled them into a sole position at the top of the points table. The UK is only 4 points behind, and Germany, the US and China are also still in the fight. The South African female team has also had a fantastic day. They too managing to move into the lead with Germany just a solitary point behind them and Mexico not too far behind either. It's going to be a hugely important final day tomorrow, and the pressure is on both South African teams. They will start the ride with big targets on their backs. The final 7th day is an 80-kilometre loop that is 3/4 off-road. The shortest day of the event, but probably also the sweetest, as it consists of some highly technical riding involving some of the best trails the region has to offer. Big climbs and descents, including deep rain channels, ruts, cambers and steps, and river crossings that remain challenging despite the low water levels, just seem to keep on coming. Once back at base camp, it is time to tackle the final super test, a part enduro, part trials course that runs along the beach in what is often very deep sand. Full throttle blasts interspersed with very technical walking pace, full lock turns on various surfaces ensure the final challenge is worthy of the super test billing. The women go first, and all the teams complete the test, with the highlight being Christelle van der Merlen single-handedly lifting her GS out of a deep rut she gets herself stuck in, adding to the superhuman reputation of the South Africans at the GS Challenge. This last-minute dose of strength and determination will prove pivotal, helping Christelle and her teammate Hannelie Zondag take the overall win for the South Africans in the Female International GS Trophy. The South African men, meanwhile, take a relatively conservative approach to the final day's ride, but crucially, it is enough to place them ahead of their nearest challengers, the UK and Germany, who finish 4th and 5th. South Africa, after a slow start by both teams, has fought back over the course of the event to secure a truly memorable double, and in so doing also notches up a 4th consecutive men's victory that is in itself a truly outstanding achievement. Maybe it'll be you representing South Africa the next time, but the only way to make that dream come true is to talk to your local BMW dealer or hunt down an entry online and get yourself into the South African GS Trophy, and who knows, you may get to represent the country somewhere that will undoubtedly be rugged and very beautiful. Right, time for our first ad break.